interwebs, and welcome to Genre Friction, the show where two exhausted women talk about television.
So on
I
point.
very on point for today,
Very
as
on
well as a
point.
cat. My cat Kipo is hiding just off screen here. He's purring. If he doesn't look like it, but he is purring right now. I am one of your hosts, Jesse Gender, and I am joined as always by.
Giraffe. Hey,
Hi.
exhausted giraffe.
To be fair, I have no excuse because I was just on the Star Trek cruise, so I shouldn't have an excuse to be tired. But
True. True
yeah,
that. Well, I was working
yeah,
and
you were toiling away.
I have no idea why everybody's so stressed right now.
Yeah, I will say I am tired because I think I got a little bit of a head cold from the cruise. Not COVID, thankfully, at least according to the test. But
Hey.
I do have a bit of a head cold, so trying to muster through. But how are you doing besides work exhaustion?
I mean, you know, I'm trying to see the good things in out there. I'm recording podcast, I'm making silly costumes, I'm reading a lot, which
Yes. Yeah.
has been very good for my head.
You've been
Um
reading Dungeon Crawler Carl, I saw.
I am reading Dungeon Crawler Call, which
Yeah.
I'm telling everybody, you need to read it, it's so
It's
good.
so good. I love it.
I like that I'm just like sending you random snippet of like bad llamas peeing in the
Oh,
corridor.
yeah, it's so much fun. Except for I'm on book 5 now, and I won't spoil. Listeners who have read the book series, they know there's a comic, there's a very funny character who gets one of the most traumatizing scenes in the entire series. It's like, Jesus Christ, this is dark.
I mean, they're murdering
Oh
elderly
yeah, oh yeah. No,
people,
this
right?
this no, I am well aware. Like I like what I like about the book series is that it's very funny and yet like the characters and the world is taken very seriously and it's like
Yeah.
dark as shit despite all the ridiculous stuff
I
going on.
mean, it's dark, but also pretty, I don't know, I pretty relevant,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
unfortunately.
Oh yeah.
Like,
The thing that I love about it in this book, I think the first book was written like 2021. I forget exactly what, but the before our current regime that we're under with Trump. And the first bad guy that Carl comes across who's like killing other like dungeon crawlers
oh
is
yeah, yeah, yeah.
described
He's
as,
an ice agent.
yeah, it's described as an ice agent. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, when was that written?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was like, damn, yeah. It's like
Uh-huh.
it gets it right. So it's I really love that series, and it gets like it is oddly very political as you keep going
It is
further.
so political already, the first book. Sorry, I'm eating chocolate because again, I'm the end of my rope, okay?
It's okay. We're in the era of who gives a shit. Like it's
I'm
fine.
holding together by Toblerone right now.
Toblerone and hope. That's
hmm
what holds me together. Well, speaking of the world going to shit, it is time for our news segment. Yay!
Some high schooler in 25, 30 years will have to listen to this
Oh
for
yeah.
like an essay. Yeah.
The anthropology of this era of humanity is going to be fascinating.
hmm
But yes, the big story that I think everyone's talking about that we should talk about is the fact that things have happened with the Paramount or with the Warner Brothers Discovery merger. Everyone probably already knows this now, but Netflix officially backed out of the deal because Paramount kept offering more and more to their deal, and now Warner Brothers Discovery is getting bought by Paramount. Whee!
They're gonna put on the first dungeon. That's what they're doing with all this
Paramount,
money.
yeah,
hmm
Paramount's gonna run the dungeon crawl. Yeah, it's
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 just so
on.
shady.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. Easily. Easily. I
hmm
mean, even today, I just pulled it up here. President Trump during all of this, bought Netflix debt amid Paramount's fight for Warner Brothers. So, like, it's, it's honestly just ridiculous and very depressing because, like, I don't want Warner Brothers to sell to anybody. Like, it's already, there's too many mergers happening, but Netflix
hmm
was at least like some level of there would be still some artistic integrity going on. Whereas Paramount, like, I just don't, I don't, I don't know what's going to become of these like really strong legacy brands like HBO Max or like HBO, right? Like they say
Mm-hmm.
they're gonna keep letting HBO running independently. They're gonna release like 15 Warner Brothers movies a year. They so they say, which I don't really buy. Uh, and so it's just like HBO is just this really known place for like good working relationships with artists. Like say what you will about many corporations, I don't really have any love for any of them, but HBO at least has some level of legacy of we work well with artists and we enable artists to kind of do what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly I have problems within that, but I just don't see that being the case under a Paramount regime, or at least not, definitely not the same.
Honestly, I just read the news about this and I feel it's very like Uncle Scroogey,
Yeah,
you
oh
know?
god, yeah.
I will give you a bowl of gold. And I'm just like, what are you even talking? What is even happening? Like, it's it doesn't bode anything good or, for the people working in this industry, which is my
No.
main issue.
Yeah.
But I am not surprised also. Are we surprised or not
No.
surprised? Yeah,
Like
exactly.
nothing. I mean, it's just gonna be less jobs in LA. I mean, both.
Mhm.
Well, I live in LA, you live elsewhere, but fairly close nearby, and we both have a lot of friends in the industry, and it's just kind of sad to just see it continually get worse and worse in this place that has been home to so many filmmakers for so long, and like. I am very much for like democratizing like filmmaking even more, getting it out of Hollywood and letting other places have a film industry. But like LA is where so many people came to make their like to make their lives and follow their dreams, and it's just kind of just slowly
Mhm.
eroding, and it's very sad to see. And this is just gonna be worse. Like there's gonna be more layoffs. Like I even without naming names, I was on the Star Trek cruise, which obviously has a bunch of Paramount folks on it. People who work for Paramount, I should say, not
Mhm.
Paramount folks. And I was talking with one of them who's worked in Star Trek for decades at this point, and he's not sure he's gonna have it. Like he survived one merger already. He's like, now I have to survive a second one. Well, and he survived many before this, but like, who knows if this one will be the one? It's constant
Mhm. That's
instability.
that's what I was gonna say. Like the first merger was already brutal, and I mean
Mm-hmm.
we are not working for Paramount CBS, right? But
Mm-hmm.
we're working with a lot of people
Who do?
working
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
Paramount CBS and having all our handlers, all of our contact, all the people that are in charge of like giving us, the screeners and the
Mm-hmm.
invites and the news and even something as trivial as the photos for episode that we used to be able to
Oh
do
yeah.
blog posts and all this, like everything went to shamble and nobody knew who was like supposed to do anything, and that's at such a low level of everything because it's just not very important stuff that we're doing in the end of the day. But
Mm-hmm.
imagine the ripples like in higher important job, and also we've seen them lay out like their DI directors and
And firing more
etc.
women and people of color. I mean, there's
Hmm.
obviously, I mean, the big we kind of danced around it, but like the big disappointment with Paramount getting it is just the fact that Paramount has capitulated to Trump in so many ways, and David Ellison is certainly one of the more overt tech oligarch related folks who clearly unlike other companies that have some level of media conglomeration like Amazon or Apple that are like tech run. David Ellison seems to be even more invested in wanting to control the political statements of Paramount. And he will say, I'm sure he would say, "Oh, we want to remain apolitical. We're trying to do four quadrant storytelling." But that in and of itself is a political choice. And then the capitulation to the Trump and the Barry Weiss of it all also reveals even more of the overt slant that he is willing to go. And to see that go to Warner Brothers, which is a storied studio with, again, certainly many of its own problems. I'm not sort of going to ever say Warner Brothers is this bastion of like,
All studios.
yes, exactly. But certainly has, I mean, they got nominated for I think 15 Oscars this year, where Paramount got none, and like that speaks to again, Oscars are bullshit to a degree, but at least it speaks to some level of like we're telling interesting stories as opposed to Paramount, which sells kind of the probably the most slop of any of the studios, one would say. So, yeah.
Yeah, we've all watched the latest Indiana Jones.
Yeah. Well, that's Disney. That's Disney. Indiana Jones is Disney. Yeah.
Wasn't it Paramount when they did the skulls of like
No.
crystal? Wasn't that Paramount?
I mean that may
It
be, but
became
then
it became Disney after, no?
yeah. But the latest there's a
Oh, the
couple Indiana.
latest one. I don't talk. Oh yeah, the latest one was not. The latest one was dumb too, but
Yeah.
it was not the dumbest.
I mean, okay, look, don't make me defend Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. There's things I like about Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I let me put it this way: I like the alien bit.
Side
Everyone hates on
quest.
the
Sorry,
alien bit.
everybody. We're
It's fine.
going.
Well, it's also the movie with Shia LaBeouf, who's also an interesting figure right now. Oh Jesus,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's his own whole escapade. Um, to touch upon another news item, on just to get, I wanted to give us something at least positive to talk about before we get into our main topic. It is Warner Brothers related, so it'll kind of have a sad tinge to it. But they also released a teaser for the upcoming Lantern show, which I am very excited about. Again, who because I like the James Gunn DCU so far. We'll see if it survives. There's talk of bringing back the fucking Snyderverse. Jesus fucking Christ.
Oh, I was
Uh,
gonna say as long as it's not Snyder.
there's I mean it's all fandom bullshit, but I mean fandom shit around Zack Snyder certainly has had influence in the past with the Snyder cut and all of that jazz, so who the hell knows. But as it stands, I am very excited for what we will get of the James Gunn DCU, and Lanterns is sort of outside of Supergirl, the next project I think up on the slate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very excited for Supergirl as well. The
Mm-hmm.
comic that Supergirl is based on,
So good.
I love that comic.
It's the best one.
It's so fucking good.
Yeah.
Woman of Tomorrow, I think is what it's titled.
Yes.
Um, but what did you think of the Lanterns trailer? We just watched it right before we started.
Honestly, I really appreciate that it doesn't give the feel of a superhero show. It
Hmm.
really gives True Detective to me.
Yeah, well, what the showrunner is the True Detective showrunner.
Really?
Yeah,
Well, good job.
yeah,
I didn't know that.
yeah,
See, I have the eye. That's why I'm on a podcast.
yeah. So you know, yeah.
No, really, I watched it and I was like, this is True Detective. No, and I really appreciate superhero genre that goes into, different fields because I think it's just interesting to explore those stories out of the usual visuals and the
Hmm.
usual aesthetics that we have for those movies. I like the fact that you know, mm, like a small town in America. I thought the setting is super interesting. I
Hmm.
am not a super well versed person in the DC comics. I've read a lot of Wonder Woman for sure and Nubia, but yeah, Lanterns not my area of expertise. It looks super cool. Like just watching that trailer, I'm like, I wanna watch that.
Hmm.
Yes. Hmm.
I am very pumped about it. I am much more of a DC person than you are. I don't read much Marvel, but I do read a decent chunk of DC. I've been off the wagon of DC for the past like 4 or 5 years, probably a little bit longer than that. I just recently have gotten back on with their like Absolute comic line, which you should read in particular. You in particular would love
Me?
the Wonder Woman line. Oh my God, the Wonder
Is
Woman.
it the black and gold? Which one is it?
No, Absolute
Oh,
Wonder Woman.
Absolute
So
Wonder Woman.
Absolute Wonder. So they have this Absolute line. Remember the Ultimates comic line
Yeah,
from
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Marvel?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's basically like that, but for DC, where it's like a
Hmm.
reimagining of all the superheroes. And all of them are really good. Like Batman, is not a millionaire anymore, or not a billionaire anymore. He's just like I think he's like a construction worker guy, and like his best friends are like the Riddler and Two-Face, and they actually help him be Batman, so he's like a more working class Batman, which is kind of cool. Wonder Woman is really good because she's not raised on Amazon. She's not raised as an Amazon. She's raised in hell with Cersei, uh,
Nice.
which is
Oh
really
yeah, I'm gonna like
interesting.
that.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's very good. It's very
Yeah.
good. And
I will add
actually,
that to the giant pile of comics. I
I
have
mean,
to read.
I'll hand them to you. I have the Absolute Wonder Woman
Cool.
ones. Um, I don't know what this Lanterns show is directly based off. If it's probably based off of another run, that I don't know, but it does kind of give me a little bit of vibes of the Absolute Green Lantern comic that recently came out. Again, it's probably based not on that, but that one also was like small town Green Lantern stuff with Hal Jordan and John Stewart.
Yeah, it's Jon
What this
Stewart, right?
was.
I was gonna say, yeah.
Yeah. And I like this trailer too for exactly the reasons that you said, that it's not doing this typical thing. Like the trailer doesn't even show us any constructs, like the Green Lantern constructs, or any like the color green is almost completely absent
Yeah.
from it, including the title, which is interesting to me.
Or
But
the suit that they show is not even
yeah,
green. Yeah.
yeah, which is very fascinating. Um, it, but we do get reference to the fact like they're apparently there's some they do say they're gonna have scenes on Oa, I forget exactly Oa, the Green Lantern planet. So we will go into space. They make reference to like aliens and the squirrel Green
The
Lantern, who I
squirrel. One
love.
of them is a squirrel.
My favorite Lantern character though is there's a Red Lantern who's a cat. There's a cat Red Lantern. I love that cat. So yeah, so at least it's there. But I am very fascinated to see where this goes. What is interesting to me is how it's going to tie into, I want it to be its own story on its own terms, but how it's also going to tie into larger James Gunn verse going on, because he says at one point like, oh, there's no other human Green Lanterns.
Hmm.
But in the Superman movie, Hal Jordan is a Green Lantern. So is this before that? Is it after? Does he not know about Hal Jordan? Seems like it'd be hard to not know about Hal Jordan, given he's like a prominent figure in the world. But
Alternative world.
that would be kind of wild. I mean, we have gotten some alternative worlds if you watched Peacemaker, so I
Hmm.
guess it's
Yeah.
kind of there. But it seems like that's really early to be dabbling in like other worlds stuff, Elseworlds stuff. When you're trying to build up the DC universe, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it'll be
I
just
mean,
interesting to see how it goes. So I also
well,
it's also I'm still upset that we have yet to get more Kyle Rayner, who is my personal favorite Green Lantern. John Stewart's great. I think John Stewart's probably a good second. And then there's Hal Jordan and Guy Gardner, but we don't get Kyle Rayner. Alas.
you cannot have everything.
I want everything, all right? If I'm going to face transphobia in this goddamn country, I at
Well,
least
we're
deserve to
getting the
get.
Black Green Lantern. Here you go.
Yes, good,
Eh?
which is true. I do appreciate that. I do appreciate that. And the actor, he's really good. He was in the movie. Have you seen Rebel Ridge?
No.
Came out like a year or two ago. You should watch it. He's really great in that. A very good movie. And he's just been around. He's solid. So yeah, we'll see how Lanterns goes, and we will probably talk about it here, folks, when it comes out. I think over the summer.
I have
Um,
a point of view that I want your
ooh,
opinion on it.
okay, okay.
Dropout is doing a Game
Oh,
Changer The Rookie crossover, and people are
mm-hmm.
mad about it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, you want to give context? I'll let you. Yeah.
Well, so Dropout, the streaming services and channel and overall a bunch of really cool show, headed by Sam Reich. They have the show called Game Changer, right? And Game
Probably
Changer is
probably
gonna
the
do
biggest show, right? I would assume.
the biggest show, yeah, the most famous one, most probably,
Yeah,
the most meme-worthy one, most probably.
that's true.
And they are going to do a crossover episode with The Rookie, which is a cop show with Nathan Fillion about dream utopic good guys LAPD. Ha ha
Mm-hmm.
ha. Ha ha. LOL. A lot of people were very mad about it because Dropout is really cherished by, let's say, people who don't like the police.
Mm-hmm. It's a
Let's go it
very
this way. It's also a very liberal
it's very
left
progressive.
progressive,
Yeah.
yeah. And also a show that very often we have Brennan Lee Mulligan reminding everybody how much he hates cops on every single show he goes on. So
Mm-hmm.
everybody was kind of thrown off by that choice, and I don't think they really explained why.
Yeah,
Um,
Sam Reich kind of said something recently about like, oh, we're not gonna like mention it on like on our stuff. It's just gonna be on the Rookie. So like the show The Rookie, I guess what's happening is there's going to be like a murder or whatever, something that's going to be investigated at the Dropout Studios
mhm.
within The Rookie. So like that's the crossover. So it's like a fictional version of Dropout, but like Dropout itself
Yeah,
will have the
for sure.
propaganda.
Or maybe they'll have them on an episode.
No, they said they're not doing that. That's
Oh,
the
they
thing.
don't. Okay.
So it's just the crossover is confined to the Rookie,
Hmm.
which like I'm not like I think everyone's right to be upset. Like the propaganda shows, like fuck them. And by the way, this is a side point. Like I don't watch any of those shows, but I look in every once in a while to be like, what's on? And there's so many of them. There's like that there's Chicago PD shows, which also has like the Chicago Fire and Chicago, what is it, ER or whatever. They
So
went to
many.
space recently. There was an episode where they went to space.
So
I don't.
many. 911.
Yeah,
I
SWAT.
can follow. SWAT.
Yeah, which
And
which
there's Marshalls on
yeah.
Paramount.
A SWAT is a fascinating one because I found out because I have a friend who did like some promotion stuff for them, and it was like I believe they had like a show that the show ran for like 5 years, and then they canceled it and just made a spin-off called SWAT colon whatever the fuck. And it was literally the same show, just with a new cast because they just didn't want to pay the cast anymore. It's just wild. It's all just cop slop.
I
Um,
think this is like crossover, let's call it, even if it's
yeah,
not one, like let's call it that. I think it was all based by the fact that Nathan Fillion is
that's
like
what I was gonna.
king
That's
of nerds, you
Yes.
know?
I mean, not to excuse it, it makes sense to me why they did it. I don't know how the deal happens. This is just me guessing. My presumption is like the people at the Rookie are fans and came to them to be like, let's do this episode. And they were like, hell yeah, because again, people figured they probably figured the Nathan Fillion of it all would be the thing that would get the nerds, their audience excited.
Mhm.
And then it's also just good exposure for them as a mainstream TV show that'll like get people to go to Dropout. So like it makes sense on like a marketing synergy level. I just think they didn't realize how little Nathan Fillion's presence would go to erasing people's frustration at propaganda stuff. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Anyway, I'm
Yeah.
not gonna watch it. I watched a season of The Rookie. It's so dumb.
It's whatever. It's
It's for people who need to feel safe and happy at night and lie to themselves about
yeah.
whatever the LAPD is doing. I'm just like, I like Nathan Fillion, but I'm more excited about the probable Firefly reunion than anything he's gonna do on The Rookie, let's be honest.
It's sad because like Nathan Fillion's just kind of had a frustratingly sad career after Firefly because like he's had stuff since Firefly. I mean, he's Hal Jordan Green or not Hal Jordan, Guy Gardner Green Lantern,
Garner, yeah.
Superman, which is
Mhm.
which is nice. So, which to be fair, Green Lanterns are also kind of cops if we're gonna be honest. They're space cops. Um, so there is that, and Guy
He was on
Gardner.
Castle, like that show was pretty
That's what
big,
I'm saying. It's just like a weird
which is also
devolution.
propaganda.
Which that's what I was saying. It's like a weird devolution though, because it's like he had Firefly and then he did Castle, where like Castle is also propaganda, but it's like it was like in that psych kind of vibe where
Mhm.
at least Nathan Fillion himself wasn't the cop. He
Yeah.
was like an author working with the cop, and then he just becomes the cop, you know? It's just an odd progression of his career.
Mhm.
So alas, poor Nathan Fillion. He's like an actor who I love and I feel like
Well,
always
they're
deserved
doing
better.
something Firefly like is Instagram. He keeps like every day going to another actor of Firefly and saying it is time, and they're like, "Is it time?"
Oh,
And that's
really?
yeah, that's there are 5 videos right now, so they're definitely doing something.
Well,
But
we'll see.
yeah,
We'll see. We'll see. I
let's
did
see
not
what
hear
it
about
is.
that. Yeah, be interesting to see how they update Firefly, given Firefly also kind of has that sort of like Civil War vibe to it. Like, there's Princess Weeks. If you ever listen to her, she's a great video essayist and a friend of mine. She did a great video about like the way Firefly sort of like uses some of the aesthetics of like the Civil War, like the lost soldier post Civil War, this losing soldier sort of thing, which is kind of
Mhm.
interesting. Um, Anywho, let us go into the topic of the show. So this is going to be an interesting one, listeners, because we are going to do something a little bit different. We're gonna have two things we're gonna talk about for our topic of the show. We're gonna first talk about Star Trek Starfleet Academy, just episode 8, which is the night. What is the? I had it up, but it's something the
The
star,
life of stars, the
the
life of the stars.
the life of the stars. So we're gonna talk about that episode. But we're not going to talk about episode 9, which will be released by the time this podcast goes out. And the reason is that episode 9 is very much a part 1 with the finale
Mhm.
of the season. So we're going to talk about episode 9 and 10 next podcast. And we're going to talk about here also A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, which Giraffe and I both watched. So we're going to talk about episode 8 of Starfleet Academy for a little bit. Then we're going to talk about the entirety of season 1 of A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, and then next week we'll get into episode 9 and 10 of Starfleet Academy. So, episode 8. I will let you go first, Jeff. What did you think of episode 8 of Starfleet Academy?
Think it was again a beautiful, incredible episode. We watched it together,
We
actually.
did. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was funny. We watched episode 7, we were like, together.
Uh,
And then we watched 8, and we are like, oh, yeah, this is really great. Yeah.
the true episode 7
Yeah.
of this season is episode 8, definitely. I think it was such a I'm gonna say bold, but I don't think bold in the idea of like, ooh, they did something unexpected, but such a bold take of Star Trek for Star Trek in Star Trek, in the idea
Mm-hmm.
that it was such a literary episode. And I think the way it was shot, the way it was written, how you had these layers of theater, literature, therapy, and also just Star Trek in between all of this was
Mm-hmm.
such a brilliant way to talk about trauma and getting together and healing and speaking about your emotion. I don't think Star Trek ever did such a complex, layered episode around a piece of literature.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Like, there's Star Trek has always been very literate. Like, it's made
Mhm.
allusions to like Shakespeare and like Moby Dick and things like that. It's always been a very
Always. It's always
yeah.
Shakespeare and Moby Dick.
It
Always.
it always is. Things dead white guys writing stuff. But yeah, but I mean, it has always like pulled from those sort of classics. I mean, Picard's quoting something almost every other
Mhm.
episode. Um, I know. Well, it's done like Les Mis. Also, like Deep Space Nine did like a Les Mis sort of thing with Cisco and Javert.
Mhm.
That whole thing. So it's been around.
But I meant like that the episode was built
Well, that's
exactly like the play, like the
no,
play.
that's
Yeah.
that's what I'm getting to. It's like this one, like those were references and like
Mhm.
sort of like pulling themes or ideas and sort of like acknowledging these things. Whereas this is very much an ode to our town and pulling from it. Not only what I liked most is like it's very clearly doing that for the cadets in the let's call it the A plot as we're dealing with
Mhm.
Tarima kind of dealing with her trauma. Um, but it also is in the B plot too, with everything going on with the Doctor and Sam, which I thought was really beautiful, right down to the stylistic choices of like the black
Yeah.
and white that we see on Cask, and then color
Mhm.
exploding in with the Doctor when he has the memories of
Mhm.
Star Trek Voyager in the episode Real Life, which I'll have thoughts on in a little bit. Um, and it goes to a criticism that I had on episode 7, which was I thought the filmmaking, just the craft of level of filmmaking, not the writing, was a little bit disappointing and kind of dull. I think is probably the best way to put it. This
Mhm.
episode, I think, was vastly different and very engaging in what it was trying to do, just with visual storytelling.
Mhm.
Which, I mean, even when I think an episode of Star Trek has done like decent visuals, I don't think they're as intentional as they as they could be
Mhm.
in sort of modern Star Trek. And this is one of the very few episodes of modern Star Trek that I feel like there's a lot of really clear intentionality, not just dynamicism, but intentionality with a lot of the film making choices. And I thought
Mhm.
that was really amazing to see.
And it's the same director.
Yeah, which
7
is
and 8.
wild. This is wild. 7 and 8 were done by the same director. I feel like maybe they just like put all of their energy. It was like I'm just gonna focus on 8. We're just get the shots for 7. Let's just go on to 8. I'm sure they had much more intention. I don't mean to badmouth the director, but it goes to show like there is talent on display here. So I'm glad that the director got to show stuff that I really liked at the very least.
Yeah, and I think that it is one of those episodes where I watched it with you. I had not read Arton. I knew about it, but
I
I
haven't
had
seen
not
Our Town since college, so it's been a while for me too. Yeah.
I didn't see it. I hadn't read it. I just, like knew of it
Mhm.
like in general, right? And I read it and then we watched the episode and how much more you take from
Oh,
the episode
interesting.
after reading the play or even like there is a version on YouTube with that's funny because we forgot his name too on Stern True Pod. Jim Parson?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Jim
Yeah,
Parsons. Yeah,
Jim
yeah.
Parson. Yeah. And it is interesting how much of the choices of the black and white and the light on the captain at the end and all this is actually from the play.
Oh,
And that I they talk about it a little bit, but there's a lot of choices that they've made in the direction of the episode that are parallel to how the play is directed normally. So um I just it makes a little literature teacher so nerdy
yeah,
that I am.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
but
It's
I thought
great.
it was a very beautiful episode, and also I just love that there are so many reference to also operas in
Mm-hmm.
it. The Klingon opera that Jaden speaks about is Titus Andronicus,
Oh.
which is like which is a classical play, and you have also the La Tosca. He listens to La Tosca, which is actually referencing the light of the stars in that
Huh.
aria. So there were so many like layers of like I'm a big opera nerd.
I know you are because you've played
And
operas. Yeah, yeah.
I was just so fascinated by those choices that basically are gonna ring a bell for like six people. But it was intentional that every single thing that we're gonna put in there meant something, especially for the doctor, because the doctor is an opera fan, right? And the
Mm-hmm.
fact that he's listening to La Tosca in the shuttle when he yet again refused to help Sam, I thought that was like very impressive and deep intentional choices that they've done that. And yeah, it's a gorgeous episode.
Yeah, I really like that because you were talking about like, oh, it'll be for six people. But one of the things that I loved for Star Trek when I was growing up was it did kind of introduce me to a lot of these things. And science fiction, generally speaking, like Babylon 5 did this a lot too, or like reference these sort of classics of literature, or other mediums, and it would help me be like, oh, maybe I should go and read that. Like I read like some Samuel Beckett from like things that got referenced in a sci-fi show and things like that. Samuel Beckett, an interesting character in and of itself, but like still like referencing these things that sort of engage, especially younger audiences, which is like Starfleet Academy is for, presume like ostensibly getting them into like learning about other pieces of literature and how to analyze literature and look at literature. Like the kids in the show are doing that too, of like how to read and have sort of literacy around how to understand something like Our Town,
Mm-hmm.
which many of Starfleet Academy's critics could stand to use maybe a little more media literacy as well. So like all of that is really cool. And I kind of want to touch upon two other things too. I really liked. There's a scene. I mean, Torima's whole arc in the episode, I really loved, of her having to kind of understand that she doesn't have to take on this trauma alone. And also, I saw some comments from people that were like, "Oh, I find it bothersome that like she's sort of singled out with all this trauma when all the other characters are also went through the same trauma and actually were like there when the kids get killed." And I'm like, the point of her character's arc here is that like it's touching upon trauma that she also experienced as another kid. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
compounding traumas and like traumas sort of influence each other. And so this is, and it kind of goes to the themes of the show of like she has a trauma in her past that now is coming up again, and she has now a community that she needs to learn to like she can go to and can help her navigate that, like handling the trauma in a new way than she did before, which is kind of an overall theme of the series, which is there's this cultural trauma that all these kids have dealt with from the burn, as well as the Federation Starfleet itself has dealt with the burn, and now they need to find a new way to get through it instead of reacting the way they used to. And so I thought that that was a great microcosm of all of this. And there's also a really wonderful scene with where she's drunk with Caleb. And I
Yeah.
thought that scene was like, it was very well done, very well handled. And the moment that I want to call out too that we don't often get to see is when she like they start kissing, and Caleb like says, "No, I don't want to take advantage of this," which one is a good thing to see, of like just a guy like being like, I don't want to go further here when you're drunk, which is a nice thing to see represented, especially for college students. But then also too that like there's a lot to be said about like how that's respectful of the woman and her right to her body and all that stuff, and the state that she's in, it being intoxicated, but also speaks a lot to like Caleb as a guy being like, hey, like he is doing something that he knows is going to upset her, and like she literally storms out, and that's something that is difficult for a lot of guys to deal with, and it's nice to see that modeled for men as well. And so I just think like all of that was just really well handled and really well done. So I really liked that quite a lot. So
Yeah, it was a very well done episode. Good job, Starfleet
yeah,
Academy, yet
yeah.
again.
Yeah, I think my sorry to end on a criticism. My only criticism of the episode that I really have is the doc. I loved all the stuff with the Doctor and Sam. I thought that was really beautiful. Really great sequence. My only negative is that the scene that he when he sort of reveals like why he hasn't reached out to Sam is so reliant on real life Star Trek Voyager episode. And not that it's a bad pull. I actually think it's a very poignant and meaningful pull. I just wish we had gotten a little bit other things that have been happened throughout his 800 years.
Like the
Just
Prodigy Kid.
like the Prodigy Kids, like Janeway, or even like I think those would be good pulls, but I think you'd also do something that was like completely made up too, that was for this episode in between
Mm.
that. Just because it would then not have the episode be so reliant on an emotional catharsis from another episode of another show. You know what I mean? And it's not that it's not relevant, and I think it was good that they brought it up. I just wish it had been kind of mixed in with a couple other things just to give a larger sense of the Doctor's life that the show has been invoking a lot this season, of like he's
Mhm.
800 years old, and by limiting it to just this one episode, which again I want to be very clear is relevant and I think well handled, it just kind of feels a little bit like it's just hitting the nostalgia reliance button of like we're gonna pull from this other nostalgia thing a little bit too much for me. It's
You
the
think a
only
lot of people know real life because that's funny. That's an episode that I remember because I thought it was so fucked up.
it is.
This
Oh, it is
episode
very fucked
is
up.
so fucked up.
Alana is fucked up in that episode.
Belana?
Yeah.
Yeah, Belana is like literally murders a child. And he's like, get over it.
Yeah.
It is wild. That episode is so crazy that I remember watching it for the first time and being, why is nobody taking care of him? Like,
Hmm.
why is nobody addressing the fact that he is suffering and they're just thinking it's like, he's making it up. I'm like,
It's
that episode is so wild. I was so glad. Actually, I was glad they used this one because I was like, I hope people go and watch it because it's a crazy episode of Voyager.
Oh, I love
And
it. And oh, go. Sorry, cut you
no,
off.
and I think my sole criticism that I have is around the same thing, but the fact that everybody gets mental health support. Like the
Hmm.
cadet, we see Tilly and Jet Reno and how they got some. They all talk about this. We see how like they're trying to help Sam, but the doctor never does.
Hmm.
And that's my minus. Is like what mental health is important. A lot of our problems come from men not going to therapy.
I actually, so here's my thing, and I think it might be a good criticism on Starfleet Academy. I actually think in Voyager it makes perfect sense that he's not getting help in that show.
Mhm.
Because what I'm working on a thing, a Star Trek book thing, and one of the things I'm going to be comparing in that book is I actually think that like the way Data is treated by Picard and the crew is a bit of a fantasy, like a liberal fantasy of like we're gonna uplift this guy who needs to learn to like become more human, and like using like a very clear metaphor that the show has repeatedly called attention to, like slave labor and
Mhm.
like autonomous labor, and then being like we're gonna uplift you and teach you how to be human is a little bit of a like liberal fantasy to a degree. Again, I love Data. I'm not saying it's like there are great things there. I'm not. This is just sort of a overall generality. Whereas the Doctor, as he says earlier in the season in Starfleet Academy, has to fight Janeway and the crew not seeing him as a person the entire show. And there's the other episode that I really love. I can't remember the title of it, but it's the one where they erase the Doctor's memory because he has that trauma from having to pick between two crew members. It was either save Kim's life or save another crew member's life, and he saves Kim's life, and they erase that memory because he's not able to process that trauma. And they do it because he's not a person, they not a person in their eyes, and they're like,
Hmm.
we can just erase his trauma and he'll go back to work doing the function that we needed him to do for us. And the episode is about like Janeway and the crew learning that they can't and shouldn't do that to a being that is coming into a personhood.
Hmm.
And there's like episodes of that show where like the doctor writes his own art and people misunderstand his art because it's from a marginalized perspective. And it was such a good episode about, I think that's called, I think that was author. I think that's what it's titled.
Author,
But
author. There's
yeah.
also the one where he brings music to a planet that doesn't have music.
Yeah. And then
And
there's
then he's
yeah.
just like devastated by it. And
Yeah.
they're just like, stop fucking around.
Yeah. There's also an episode where like there's literally like the Hirogen are killing holograms, and Janeway's like, "Yeah, we'll help the Hirogen deal with the holograms." And Doctor's like, "No, that's like you need to. This is a holographic rights issue." And Janeway's like, "Oh yeah, I'm not gonna let you turn this." She literally says, "I'm not gonna let you turn this into a thing about holographic rights." And he's like, "But that's what it's about, though. You don't
Mhm.
get to ignore that." And so I actually really I would argue, and this is gonna be a hot take. I think the Doctor's arc throughout Voyager, and I think continued on into Academy to a degree. They're like, oh, he's 800 years old. He's got this. He knows how to handle this. When he clearly is a guy still dealing with different traumas.
Mhm.
Um, they're like, he's got this, or he's not a person, or he can handle it himself. And I actually think it's really well. It's a really clear arc that I think is actually, for me, works better than Data's arc in a lot of ways. Hot
I
take.
agree.
Hot take.
I
Yes.
agree.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I'm a Voyager stan, TNG is not my favorite track, so
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna have hate mail. I don't care.
I am with you. I was in my improv class. I was doing an improv class, and they did an improv thing where you could just ask somebody every single question that you want, like just ask them, they'll answer. And so I was up doing that, and people learned I was a Star Trek fan because it was like a icebreaker, get to know you class thing. And they learned I was a Star Trek fan. Like, oh, what's the best Trek and what's the most overrated Trek? And I said, best Trek, Deep Space Nine, most overrated, Next Generation.
But I
Mm-hmm.
agree, and that's why we're friends.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
how it is. Yeah.
And it's why we're gonna lose all of our subscribers on this podcast episode. Ugh. Anywho, let us get into our next topic of the show, which is A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, season 1. What did you think, Giraffe?
I watched that show only because you made me. Let's be honest. I would have not watched it.
You're
Uh,
welcome.
yeah, I liked it. No, I liked it.
Mhm,
But I come from a person who read Game of Thrones, like forever before the series and whatever,
mhm.
and then watched the series and then stopped at some point. And I actually never finished Game of Thrones, and I learned that I was right. So this,
Mhm.
and then I started watching House of the Dragon. I thoroughly disliked a lot of like trope that they used, especially the gore violence against women that had no intended purpose. And I was like, at this point, I was like, I am done with this franchise. This is toxic male. Let's pregnancy torture women. Let's groom them and have them do incest. Let's them like pedophile. You name it. Like, there's
I
a lot of like issues that for me don't make I don't have a problem with having those topics in a story if they make sense in the story. If they help talk about something. Game of Thrones is just like was at one point just shock values and for dudes to be "Ooh," and I'm like that I am not the targeted audience of this.
I don't hate House of the Dragon, but especially that first season, it is so like the amount of like body horror around pregnancy that stuff is can only be written by a man who's afraid of women's bodies.
Yeah,
Not to
I
say there were
watched
women who worked on the show, to be very clear, but the showrunner very clearly had a bent there. But
I watched those few episodes and I was like, and I am done. Thank you very
mm,
much. And I never picked it back. So, A Night of the Seven Kingdom, I was like, I'm not gonna watch this. And then you were like, no, you didn't watch it. It's so good. You make me read your your review when I had watched like maybe half of an episode. So I was like, okay, I'll watch it again. And I have criticism about it. I still think I'm not the target audience for that thing. But I think it is a very interesting shift in this franchise of people who I think come from the same place than me and being, I don't think that endlessly talking about men of power doing horrible, terrible things and just disregarding human life and just here to torture and laugh and rape and pillage. I don't think it is a story that one makes sense, two interest anybody anymore, or like not maybe the people that we want to be interested
Mm-hmm.
in our show,
Mm-hmm.
and that it limits the world that they're building. It creates a world that is so narrow of the human experience, and they wanted to do something else. And I think that's really the strength of that series.
Yeah. Pause 1 second. I'm gonna let my cat out because he
I
is
I
very.
keep seeing your cat behind you, and I'm stressed. I'm like, poor cat, let him
I know I
out.
need to let him out. Give me 2 seconds.
Do you know how long I have been looking at that cat behind you?
Oh, I know for like 10 minutes, I'm sure. All right.
Okay,
Well,
so go ahead.
yeah, my thoughts. So just to say this outright, since we're kind of condensing a lot of our thoughts about the whole season in this, I have done a video over on my main channel where I talked about the first episode, but it kind of applies to the entire show. I think everything I said in that video about the first episode applies to the whole show. And I've also was recently on the Cast of Kings podcast talking about a few of the episodes. So if you want my more nitty gritty, in depth thoughts about a bunch of episodes, go check out those two things. You should also listen to Cast of Kings. David Chen and Kim Renfro are amazing there, and I'll be on there for House of the Dragon. Anyways, sorry to promote the other stuff, but just to give that out there. For me though, just to kind of top level this whole season, I am with you. What I really love this show for is it's in wonderful conversation with both of the other Game of Thrones shows, where those shows, as you say, are very cynical in a lot of ways, and like the books aren't necessarily cynical, but the shows are very cynical in a lot of ways about human nature and what humans kind of can be. And this show is just so tender and empathetic, and you see, and I think it feels more true, even though it's more hopeful, because it sort of looks at like, yes, people experience violence and pain and suffering quite often at the hands of the powerful. Even the powerful are harmed
Hmm.
by these systems of power that they are involved in. Quite literally, as we'll go full spoilers here, we see Prince Baelor die while he's still trying to be the honorable, noble guy,
Hmm.
and and yet you see that there are people even within these systems that care for each other and are tender with each other. Like I love in the opening episode we get, like, I didn't talk about them in my video, but the sex workers who are
Yeah.
like kind of making fun of Dunk, but then when Dunk shows earnestness to
Hmm.
them, they sort of they show it back to him. They sort of see him and they just talk about like take care of your body,
Hmm.
and it's like this sense of like taking care of your own physical body because that's going to age, and sex workers are very attuned to their
And the
body.
finale gives him
Yeah.
right, like
Hmm.
she marries the guy,
She
right?
does.
And he
She
says
does.
nothing.
Yeah, he does.
And
And I really love that. And I love that it's a show about like how, like, you have Egg, the little kid who is going to grow up in these systems and probably going to become a crueler person because of it, as we even hear with the main antagonist of the show, which is a I forget, Aryan, whatever the main
Arian, yeah.
area,
Yeah.
Aryan, this sort of asshole Targaryen in a long line of asshole Targaryens in Game of Thrones, both before and after him, as we've seen. Um, and you see that he wasn't always that way. That he
Hmm.
was like a good kid. We sort of get reference, and Egg could become that same way, and it speaks to how a lot of like people who are, grow up rich or privileged, they learn that they learn a lot of it because of the systems that they grow up in, and where they are taught how to benefit from white supremacy and
Hmm.
benefit from capitalism and things like that, and to see people as property or things to be used,
Hmm.
and how that is a taught skill and not something that is innate to human nature, as sort of other Game of Thrones shows sometimes imply. And I think that that's really nice to see, and I like that it sort of takes a moment to sort of zig and on that, and show like, okay, Dunk can provide another path. And Dunk himself being a kid, I mean, in the books, he's like, I think he's only 18. He's obviously aged up a little bit for the show. But he's still a kid, essentially, who is also trying to figure out his way, and taking the lessons that he learned, and trying to apply it to others, and how much you realize, like, the people who are trying to teach you are also themselves figuring it out as they go a
Hmm.
lot of the time. And I think that that's such a beautiful thing. And the final shot of the show, or one of the final shots of the
Beautiful.
show, where it's just like, yeah, Egg and
Hmm.
Dunk riding off with their horses, and then Dunk sort of metaphorically his teacher, Arlen Pennytree, going another way, sort of symbolizing his dying, and then it's passing on to the next two. I thought was such a beautiful visual, and actually got me tearing up
Yeah,
at
me
the
too.
end. Yeah.
I think it's a beautifully shot
Oh
show.
yeah.
I have
Yeah.
to say that this is maybe 30% of the reason why I kept watching, because it is so beautiful. The finale had so many reference to Flemish paintings and like those
Hmm.
clair obscur, chiaro obscuro with like those like lights and those black beds and even the clothes that Egg is wearing in the end is like straight up from like the 1500s painting. It is strikingly beautiful. Like a feast. Even like the Battle of the Seven is really beautifully shot for and they I mean it is gory in a way, but I felt it they managed to walk that line between epic and violence, but also hopeful, but also ultra realistic, but also just aesthetically beautiful. And I think they did a great job at shooting that show. It is
What
so beautiful.
what I really love about that battle sequence for me, just from the filmmaking perspective as well, is that it keeps you in the point of view of Dunk
Hmm.
for the all of it, like inside his
A few
helmet
the
shot.
helmet, yeah.
Yeah, but also like even when it does go outside of his helmet and we're with like you get to see all the other stuff going on. Like it must have been a pain in the ass to choreograph because like
Hmm.
there's like horses running through and you see stuff in the background and the camera's trying to catch it, but it's staying on Duncan. You're always with him and you're just getting little senses of what's going on around him. And that feels very like you're in it in a way that like I don't think any other Game of Thrones show has done. Like generally speaking, when they've shot the big battle sequences, even ones that I love, like the Battle of the Bastards, which is a really great battle sequence in that
Hmm.
show, even that is fairly not detached, but it still gives a wider perspective.
It's glamorized.
Yes, exactly.
And this show doesn't glamorize that. It's
No.
also very narrow in the space that they
Hmm.
shoot. It's never like big openings, never big places. It's always like those narrow rooms. This like the field for the joust. It's I think the only open even when they are in an open field, it's always shot pretty.
Yeah, it's a very tight. It's very
Very
like
tight. Yeah.
as opposed to like Game of Thrones, where you get like the big halls and King's Landing and everything, which I really loved. Um, yeah, I think it's a really beautiful adaptation. I think I'm very excited. I hope they get more seasons. It seems like it's done really well for them, so at least we'll get probably a season two. Yeah,
Big up to my favorite character, which is Lionel Baratheon.
oh yes, I wanted to make sure I touched upon
She's
him.
my
My boy, my beautiful boy.
my is giving so much like I don't know. It is that is a such a great written character
I would
because
die for
he's a
that.
dick, but also he's smart, but also he's kind, but also he has power. He understand and he doesn't give a shit at, but he does. It's like it's a character that has been written all in like those in between.
Mhm.
He's not the guy who doesn't care. He's not the guy who keeps eating. He's like, he dances and he jokes, but he still has like a moral compass, even if he pretends he does not. His lines, all of them absolutely hilarious.
I love him.
Delivered. I don't know who is that actor, but like
He is so
he's
good.
so good. Plus, he's also one of the few spot of color in that show because he's always wearing actually that yellow I'm wearing, uh,
Yeah.
Barbie in yellow, when everything is so dark and bland and like kind of washed up, except for the Targaryen, where like black and red.
Red.
He's
Yep.
like the only one that has like that bright yellow all the time, like that cloak that he wears at the end. Very beautiful costuming. Also, like the costuming that was fantastic. How they layer the population and you can like tell right away. And that's really the goal of like clothing. It's like
Hmm.
to show your power and to show where you stand and show who you are and how much you have. And that show did a great job with the costuming. I think all the Game of Thrones show do a
The
great job with
costume has always been
yeah.
yeah, pretty solid. But yeah, this one especially it worked really well with this. And yeah, Lionel Baratheon is my boy. I would die for him. Every single scene that he is in is so great. I think my favorite one is in episode I think 2 where they're doing the tug of war game and
Oh
he's like,
yeah.
"Will you come fight for me?" And then he just like leaves the tug of war at one point and like goes to get a drink and then he like slaps Dunk on the bum and I'm like, "I ship it. I ship it so hard."
But he's like,
And
I'm gonna love you like a brother. I'm gonna
yeah,
hate you like a brother.
exactly. I love it. He is so great. And yeah, I agree with you. Like the the complicated way that he is portrayed of like someone who seems like he doesn't care. He's like trying. He kind of has this like he has a similar thing that a lot of Baratheon characters have in Game of Thrones. Where he's like, I don't really care, but he actually does have a big heart,
Hmm.
even though he tries to sort of play it off as like, I'm just gonna eat and be merry and not give a shit and be fully into just the pleasure. And it's like, no, no, he does actually really care. Um, and it's why Baratheons are my favorite house in Game of Thrones. I play the Game of Thrones board game all the time. It's my favorite board game actually. If you never played it, and I always play the Baratheons because they're the best, except for Stannis. Stannis is terrible.
Well, I think
Um,
it's also the first character that made me understand that that show would be different because in
mhm,
episode 1, when Dunk arrives in his tent, and from watching Game of Thrones, I'm like, he's gonna kill him, he's gonna
mhm,
torture him, he's gonna
or
break
hurt
his
him.
legs, he's gonna, do something terrible to him. And he's like, ah, no, just eat and let's dance, but I'll kick you in the nuts. And
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
Well, it speaks to like the sense of like equality that can happen there. There's that in that opening. I talked about this in my video. Whereas there's that sequence where in any other Game of Thrones show would be a moment where he like tortures him or gets revenge on him because of his
Mhm.
power, and he kind of just treats Dunk as a bro. And there's that bit that I really love that apparently I don't think was in the script. I remember hearing in an interview it wasn't in the script. It was the thing the actors found, and I loved it, which was him trying to stomp on Dunk's feet, and then he eventually like Dunk stomps on his foot back, and it's a moment where again he as a lord he has every right to like I can take your foot now or something like that or punish him in some way, and he's like nah I love it, and he just like sticks out his tongue, and it's like there's a sense of in this space there's an equality between these two that is able to eschew all the power games of the rest of the world. And like obviously that doesn't exist at all times. At the end of the episode there's a little bit of like Lionel being like, I come work for me, like a little bit of a play there in terms of power. But I think there's a sense of Lionel wanting an equal that he doesn't really get to have as a lord that I really love there. So I absolutely adored Lionel for all of that. And then also one other thing too, well, this is what I'll say. I don't want to spoil, but if you know the history of where Lionel Baratheon goes in Game of Thrones, in just the history of Westeros, I really hope they get to adapt the other big thing that happens with him because I know it'll break my heart in a really fun way. It's not even something that's just in the history books of the show. If you like read the
Mhm.
history, it's an interesting thing. Only other thing I want to note about the show before we wrap out of it is I also really want to call attention to that one scene where they're singing the song about the woman who gives good anal sex, like good. Yeah, which I thought, which like I'm listening to this. I was watching it with my partner Aaron, and I like as the song's going on, I'm like, wow, that's a dirty song. And then we get like Egg and Dunk having this interesting philosophical like bit about it, which I thought was just so again, it speaks to the show's empathy of like speaking to like having empathy for a song that's just sung about like a girl who's good at like giving like good at like fingering men's butts, you know what I mean? It's just I really thought that was really cool, and a lot has been made of the show showing like genitals and shitting and all of this stuff, and people being grossed out by it. But
It's always so like outwardly also, like in a way that it's
yeah,
like
but
the
it's
genitals we see were just like, excuse me.
yeah. Well, one I will say it's very humanizing, except for the overly big dick. Because I watched
Yeah.
that, I was texting our mutual friend Gene, and I was like, "That dick is too big. Like that just looks like where does he put it in his armor? Like he's a knight.
No, that's
Like
what I mean. Like it's just like fantasy kind of like it's ridiculous. Even the
yeah,
shitting is crazy,
yeah, yeah.
Like it's just like kind of slightly too much that it makes you not see it as like, oh, I'm seeing somebody naked.
Hmm.
You're seeing like something that you've never seen, and you're like, what am I watching? And
But
I
it's
think
also
that was good.
yeah, but it's also humanizing in a way too, because like if you look at other Game of Thrones stuff, like it's always in that male gazy way, which
Yeah.
which I want to be clear for listeners, people when they hear the male gaze, they often tend to think of like it's a man looking at a woman and object like, and that is part of it. Like part of the male gaze in film is like who owns the look, and if it's you usually will have a man looking at a woman character and it being where we as the audience are in the man's perspective objectifying and looking at the woman. That is, by the way, and I want to say that's not an inherently bad thing. It is the ubiquitous of that with men towards women that is the problem in film.
Mhm.
But the other element of the male gaze, or another element of the male gaze that people don't talk about as much, is how bodies are often segmented and put off as like slabs of meat. Of how like women's body parts, it's just like their breasts or their legs, or like
Mhm.
will like pan up them. Like women never get to be shot in full body mode, and the same thing kind of happens for men too when we
Yeah.
ogle them. Like think of Thor
Mhm.
in the Marvel movies, where we get to like objectify his chest and like see him as a piece of meat. Um and this show never does that. The nudity that we get to see in this show is never overly like shot like in a spectacled way, nor is it segmented and like shown as like they're just a piece of meat. It's very humanizing in a weird way. Like the shot where Dunk shits in the episode, it's shot from a distance. Like we're not up in him and getting like gross out. Look how nasty his shit is, like we see in other Game of Thrones shows, which would be like, look at this shit on the ground as we get like close up of it. But it's like, yeah, it's gross just to see someone shit, but like it's distanced and like we're coming upon like a private thing, and it's a very humanizing way to shoot it. So
What
I
did you
thought, yeah.
think? What did you think about the almost total absence of women in that show?
Uh, I think it may. I mean, if you read the novella, the only woman that also really exists in the novella is the woman who was beaten by the Targaryen guy. So I will at least give the show that they added more with the sex worker characters, and they gave the one woman who was there to be beaten more character than she's given in the novella as well.
And there's also his friend from
Yes, who
like
is also
yeah.
implied, yeah, who's also in the novella. Is we don't get that backstory, we just get
Mhm.
him referencing his history, and that character is alluded to be a boy in the
Mhm.
novella as well, so they changed the gender of her as well. Though you had an interesting criticism of this that I agree with. I'm curious what you're, if you want to say it, you don't have to.
About the women?
About the childhood friend, it's just like,
Oh
oh
yeah, they just like at the moment she showed up, I was like, she's gonna die.
yeah, that's why as soon as
I'm
she
like,
showed up too, I'm like, yeah, she's dead. Yeah,
and
yeah.
for sure, like this, they didn't make me lie. They were just, oh yeah, we're gonna slit her throats, and I'm
Yeah,
like, for sure,
yeah, it's
for sure.
fridging the friend, and
Because you have three women in the idea. You have the princess who has like a line in the beginning and line in the end,
Mhm,
but who says that hey, she actually helps the dunk, like
mhm,
she's kind of like that little like help here and there. You have the friend that gets like that dies as in
mhm,
childhood. You have the puppeteer who got her finger
mhm.
broken, starts a whole thing, and then disappears because she is a black woman. She's smart, and she disappears.
She's like, peace,
She
I'm out, not dealing with
He's
this shit.
out.
Yeah, yeah. In the
And
novella,
then
she's
you
the
have the
only real
sex
woman in the
workers.
yeah.
And you have the fortune teller also,
Yes, yes, that
which is
one as
like
well.
here for one scene. But they're really like in and out of the like kind of the characters. The main character Dunk lives in a world, like very clearly, and women pop in and out because they exist as worker or they exist or in the inn too.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah, the
so
innkeeper,
they're like
which
here.
is interesting because that's the one place where we get to see a woman kind of having a controlling something, like she
Yeah.
runs the inn there. Anyways.
But it gives really like this idea, oh yeah, men do things and women are here and there because I suppose they exist. And I, for me, it disconnected me a little bit from the thing because I care about Lionel, but the rest of the character, Egg, yes. I don't really give a shit about any of them. Like, I struggle to learn any of their name.
Oh,
At one point,
see,
old
Dunk is my little child, and I want to protect him, but
Dunk is, yeah, but I mean, he's also like a normal, plain guy looking guy,
yeah,
And I'm
that's fair.
like, I would not be able to pick him out of a line of over plain looking guy,
See, Peter Claffey and Ethan Peck feel like they could go to himbo school together. Yeah.
Uh, but then, same for like all the different knights that suddenly popped up, like all the apple guy, the bee guy. I'm just like, I don't know who these people are. I don't understand. And it was a lot of, one scene dudes that kind of all look the same in the end to me because they were all wearing armor also. And I was like, oh yeah, the guy with the leg that was broken. They had to like keep reminding you who those people were. And I'm like, you have very good character like Lionel, like Egg, like Dunk and Baylor, like that have like, or even the Joss Master.
Mhm.
We have like this complexity, and the rest seem to be like basically like automatic populated NPCs. And I was
Yeah.
just at one point I was like, it's men doing men thing with their manly man hands, and I was like, okay.
Yeah, I
But
agree. I mean, I guess I agree. I think it's also probably a problem with the novella and the setting to a degree of what's the focus. It is certainly, I think, like while there are less women focused than House of the Dragon, I think this show's women are more humanized than even the House of the Dragon are.
yeah.
And so I'll give it that. And also just to at least say it because I know book readers will yell at me if I don't, without spoiling, I am curious to see what the if they do get a season two and they adapt the second novella, there is a very prominent woman character in that novella, again without
Mhm,
spoiling, who I am very excited to see what the show does with because
mhm.
she's a very unique character in the Game of Thrones world and is a very prominent female character. So,
I mean, I know a lot of men live their life like this,
oh
in a
yes,
world
yes.
that is prominently men,
Mhm.
and they see women here and there because they sell like food or like they are around, I guess, but they don't exist in their world. So I'm not like mad at it, you know what I mean? But I was just like looking for a cool character where I could latch on, and I was like, I guess I'll get that Queen Lionel for me.
Yep, we stand. I mean, it's not a bad criticism. I think it's just it's the nature of the show, and I will give
Yeah.
it to Ira, the writer, that he added more women characters and gave more complexity to the women characters that were there. So I'll at least give him that. And again, I am excited to see what we get next season with the women character.
Mhm.
And also worth noting, I mean, this is generally the case with television. But I think the show is there's I think two main directors throughout the season, one of whom was a woman. I think she directed like three or four of the episodes.
Mm,
Um, and that, just so listeners know, that is actually generally the case. There's a lot more women directors in television than there are in
that is
film.
true.
Um, but she is also very very cool as well. I listened to some interviews with her, and I there's a lot of like women directors in TV that I look up to, like Hannalie Culpepper, who directed the Star Trek Picard premiere,
Mhm.
and a few others. Because sadly, as a woman director myself, you don't get a lot of that representation in film. You get a lot more in TV, and even then, barely any trans women directors to look up to. So there's that.
Mhm.
um, and also to mention women of color as well. All right. Anything else to say on that topic?
No, I liked it. I will watch the season two
Yes.
without you telling me to watch it.
Yes. What I will say is I think the third novella is probably I think the more interesting than the second one. But the second one has probably my favorite character, which is that aforementioned woman character. So we'll see
I
where it
may read
goes.
the books. Who knows? Once I'm
They're
done
really
with
fun.
Dungeon Crawler Carl.
Yeah, you're gonna be in it for a while. They're almost on book 8. I'm on book 5, and then he's
I
about to release
almost
book 8.
finished book
So
one in like 3 days.
yes, but they get progressively bigger. Every book is like
Like,
significantly bigger. So
okay.
yeah. And I don't, and I say that as someone who like, as I've been rushing through them. I'm on book 5, so I go through them quick.
I like thick books and I cannot lie.
I like thick books, I cannot lie.
Mm.
Well, on that note, what do you want to recommend to people to read, check out, listen to, look at this next week?
I have it with me.
Oh, I want to read that. Yes.
Yes. So, this last week, 25th February, the one shot about Uhura, on IDW called Star Trek Deviation Threads of Destiny came out. It is written by Stephanie Williams, who wrote Nubia, who wrote Wonder Woman Black and Gold, some of the issues. Incredible black woman comic book writer. Should I say more? It's illustrated by Maldonado. It's, first of all, one, gorgeous. It is
Oh yeah,
gorgeous.
that
Like
cover art looked
that
amazing.
cover, I'm gonna take it out of the plastic. I'm that kind of person. Absolutely fantastic. And It is also a very interesting and cool story. I will say that. It is very Star Trekky, but it is something between Far Amongst the Stars and The City of the Edge of Forever,
All right.
without
Two
spoiling
episodes that
too
are
much.
great. Oh,
Um,
two probably my
it
favorite
is
episodes.
very smart. It is very anchored around the civil rights movement. Uh, very Star Trek. I am so happy that Stephanie Williams got to write Uhura. I think that was an excellent, 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 excellent choice. Um, yeah, I read it. Go. I have the other cover, but it's not printed anymore.
Oh no.
And when you see comic books like this, just pre-order them at your local comic book shop, which is what I do.
Yes.
I literally send them DMs on Instagram. Big up to Kamikaze in San Diego. Didi, Didi's the best. Uh, and yeah, do that. It is good for the writers. The more pre-order they get, the more work they get. It shows that you're interested in what they do, and yeah, go
Yeah.
pick it up. It's really good.
I'm very excited for Star Trek comics. They announced a few new ones, but the one that I'm pumped for is they just announced a new series from Charlie Jane Anders, who is a trans woman and one of my favorite writers of all time. I adore her books so much. So the fact that she is getting a Star Trek series, I am very very pumped for. So very excited about that. A lot of trans women writers in Star Trek comics recently, which is I'm very happy about. My recommendation is a book called The Disordered Cosmos: A Journey into Dark Matter, Spacetime, and Dreams Deferred by Chandra Prescott-Weinstein.
She's
Um,
one of my friends too.
yeah, which I did not know. I
Hey,
did not know. Yeah.
Chandra.
Yeah. This book is great, and they are an amazing writer. To let people know, it's a book about physics, but it is a book about how physics and how we understand astrophysics and science is informed by culture. And Chandra, by the way, is agender. They sort of talk about the relationship between, institutional white supremacy, racism, sexism, all of these things, and how it's influenced
Mhm.
our view of how we understand astrophysics. They also talk a lot about Star Trek, and like niche Star Trek too. Like the Star Trek they talk about the most in the book is Star Trek Enterprise, which I was like, oh, cool, amazing. Like we're gonna go. Like most
I
people just say Next Generation, maybe Voyager, Deep Space Nine, never Enterprise, which is
I
fascinating.
know them from Star Trek
Yeah,
conventions
I've
and
not.
events and so on.
They talk about going to Star Trek conventions. So yeah, it's a really great book. They actually have a new book. I heard about this book. So this book came out in 2021, I think, is around that time. It's also very depressing because they talk a lot about the first Trump administration
Mm.
and like talking about the same problems that we're talking about right now, about how like, oh, a lot of white liberals just want to go back to their comfort and not wanting to actually like change something. They're just waking up now to the fact that America has totalitarian history, but they view it as an abnormality of like, oh, Trump's the abnormal thing, instead of it being him being the sort of culmination of a long history of these things. And yet we're still here 5 years later from when they wrote that book. Anyways, they have a new book that's going to be more pop culture focused
Yeah,
coming out next month that I'm very excited to read as well. So
absolutely.
I checked out
Yeah.
this book. So
We should read it and review it. That
we
would be
will.
fun.
We should.
I
That would be
can
good.
can I plug one more thing? Do we
Yes,
have
please
time?
go
Yeah,
for it.
I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
we're recording. We do whatever we want.
We have as much time as you want. Do what you want to do.
If you like animation and TTRPG, my friend actually just has a show on Beacon TV with Critical Role. Josh is the DM, and also if you watch Titmouse, if you not Titmouse, if you watched Dropout, if you watch Dimension 20, one of the player is Rashawn Scott, which I loved her in Bureau's End. If you've not watched that campaign of Dimension 20, it's one of my favorite campaign. This is pretty cool because I know a lot of people work at Titmouse also, and this is this kind of project that bring a lot of different, very cool people together to do something new and interesting. It's on Beacon TV, and you can watch it right now.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of promoting people and getting to hear about cool things, where can people find you, Giraffe?
You can find me on Instagram at lyrical_giraffe with an F because it's French.
Uh-huh.
And I'm also on Blue Sky at spotted giraffe. And yeah, here every two
Yeah.
week. and on Strange New Pod every Thursday. I am so busy.
Same. I
Is
totally
why
get
I'm
you.
tired.
Yeah. Well, you can find me on Jesse Gender on YouTube, Jesse Gender After Dark for my review channel. I'm on Blue Sky, Instagram. I think that's pretty much everything. Patreon if you want to support me paying my bills. Nebula if you want to see some other stuff that I do, you can check out that. Beyond all that, that's everything that I got. So until next time, everyone, I hope y'all live long and prosper.
Bye bye.